Welcome, dear brothers and sisters, in the studio of the Sabbath School Department with the General Conference. With the help of the Lord, we would like to present to you our new Sabbath School lesson for this week. And we are continuing with the subject of our brother, but this time we're going to study about Joseph and his brothers. With the help of the Lord, we would like to begin our study having a silent prayer, inviting the presence of God among us. Please join us. Amen. Once again, we're with our dear sister Raquel. Welcome, Raquel. And as usual, we wish to have a review of the structure of the Sabbath School lessons. Looking for his brothers is the title. And let's see what is this Sabbath School lesson about. The first undertitle we're going to face is difficulties among brothers, and I think since the name of Joseph is here and the title is suggesting this topic, almost everybody, even the children, have studied this story, and they know the tragical end of Joseph and the glory actually with his brother, and the glorious end of the story when he was in Egypt. But let's see how the lesson go forward. It's a slowly development and the story, and also the subject, and we would like to get as much as possible of the wisdom of this inspired story. The divine dreams and their meaning. Let's see what this undertitle is about. And it's very important when we present the Sabbath School lesson that we make the parallels between Joseph's time and also the conclusions we can make for our work and our life today. The next undertitle, A Long Search for His Brothers. It's the detailed process of how Joseph was looking at the brothers, and it's very important to make again the parallels between that time and our time, and how we can actually apply or what do we learn from this story in our personal life with our brothers. Our example worthy of imitation, it's the conclusion of the lesson, question number 7, and there we can actually put everything together, considering that the missionary work is very similar like the work Joseph did for his brothers. Let's see now and analyze every single question of the lesson with the help of the Lord, beginning with the first questions. What was Joseph's responsibility in his parent home? And what is related about him in the behavior of his brothers? What can we say about Joseph, Raquel, and his brother in general as an introduction, where they were, and a little bit about the family, his father, and why he had so many brothers, and the situation was not really so pleasant among the brothers.
So the first question has the purpose to locate us correctly in the situation where Joseph was in. And it's extremely important to consider this Bible text because help us to understand that the family where Joseph grew in was a conflictive one. Why? The main reason is that different mothers were present, and children from these 4 different wives of the father, Joseph, were there. So generally this produced tension and animosity. But beside that, Joseph was without mother at that time. He had only one brother from mother and father, that was Benjamin, was small at that time, and Joseph was a teenager, was 17 years old. And he was a very active young man We see here that he was feeding the flock with his brethren, and in this patriarchal system of family, Jacob, the father that became Israel, was the head of the family, but all the other members were active and engaged in the general well-being of the completely community. Besides that, we need to consider that at that time, Israel and all his family were the people of God. That was the Church of God. They were located in what today is Palestine and part of Israel. Canaan was the name of this region at that time. And according to the report that we find in the reference Bible text in Genesis 37:2, it's clear to us that the children of Jacob that were older than Joseph were already adult men that work actively and in combination in all the activities that needed to be done in this specific case, taking care of the flocks, and Joseph was also part of it. Beside the reference to two wives of Jacob, we find here that Joseph somehow make a difference between his general behavior and his brothers, especially because Joseph reported to his father the evil things that he observed and he saw in this working relationship with his brethren. And obviously we can understand that this brought tension and really problems between them. And beside that, we can see that Joseph was not partaker of this evil behavior that they had. He was only an observer, but he had a firm character and didn't collaborate or take part in the evil doing.
Thank you very much, Raquel. That was a very important report about Joseph. And actually, in addition, we can say that he was the beloved son of his father. He had a special coat with many colors, which even the children know that happened this way. And we can make a parallel, for example, with the story of Cain and Abel, that the same way Abel was accepted by God because of his good character and because of his obedience, and Cain's offering was not accepted, and that makes him very angry. And in a similar way, in the family of Joseph, his brothers were not friendly with him. They envied him, they hated him, and there was animosity among them. We're going to see furthermore in the lesson how these negative thoughts and feelings have developed and what happened. And actually also today in our church or other brothers and sisters circumstances, we can also fall in a similar circumstance, in a similar situation. We want to see what we can do and what we can learn from this Sabbath school lesson. Let's go furthermore and see the second question and also the further development of the story of Joseph. What is known about the brothers' relationship with Joseph, and can we say that the latter was the blame for this situation? What can we say about this, Raquel?
This second question clarify us the relationship between father and son, and the Bible explanation is very clear, is saying that Israel loved Joseph more than all his children. And we find here a problem, this favoritism, this special relationship that Israel developed with Joseph brought envy, jealousy, that developed also in hatred toward Joseph from side of his brethren. And somehow the peace or a regular and comfortable relationship was not possible. The Bible also explained to us the reason why Jacob, now Israel, feel this special attachment to Joseph. It was saying to us because he was the son of his old age. And maybe we need to add here that was also the son of his beloved Rachel. He dedicated a special time to Joseph, show publicly and demonstrate very openly that this preference and favoritism was a reality, especially when he gave to him a coat of many colors. So beside the personal relationship, now was also a open and a clear revelation of this difference, because the father didn't give any gifts, at least from the same value, to all the other children. So we see here a mistake that we need to learn from. As parents, sometimes we can have the tendency to be closer to the child that is more obedient, that is more ready to do and to help us in everything that we requested. But we cannot forget this example, that affection, attachment, recognition need to be shared equally, for sure, according to the condition and situation of every child, but never we can partialize ourselves and focus our love or attention only and exclusively to one of our children, because this will disturb the peaceful relationship inside of the family.
Thank you very much, Raquel. That's very important. What can we learn from this question and this situation? In the church, we have brothers and sisters, and in very similar conditions as they were in that family. What happened is that we have also leaders, and many times certain members have bigger preferences than others. Certain members of the church are more gifted than others. They are more or better educated, and there are others who have better financial conditions. There are serious differences, and can be serious differences between the members. What happened is that a similar envy can be developed inside of church toward those who are more blessed, or those who are more preferred, so those who are elected or have a better response and have many friends. What is very important in leadership in this case is that the pastor or leader or director of the church or elder of the church should not make a preference among the members, as we see that here Jacob make preference among his sons. It's so important that we do not take sides. If there is a quarrel, if there is a misunderstanding among the brothers and sisters in the church, we need to take a middle neutral position in order to be able to judge properly and not be partial. Let's go forward in the lesson, and we can see that although Joseph was a kind of inside of a situation that he could do nothing more than that, and that his father Jacob was committing an error or mistake, this does not justify the evil behavior of his brothers, and either this justified a negative behavior among the church members if there is a preference about one on another of the members. Let's go furthermore and see in question number 3. Did Joseph's brothers have a good understanding of the dream and that he told them, and what feeling did they have toward him? Now dreams enter into the picture. What kind of dreams, Raquel, And what have these dreams to do with the whole picture and the whole situation among the brothers?
The content of this dream and the way, excuse me, how,
God bless you.
thank you, sorry, that Joseph developed the communication of this dream show us something very important in the character, the condition, inside of the family, and also the personal relationship that they develop. First of all, we see that God communicated with Joseph. This let us come to the conclusion that he developed a very close relationship with God. So far that God revealed to him the future and let him know how the things will be. So Joseph was a teenager and he was amazed, impressed with these kind of dreams that not only happen one time, so repeatedly in different circumstances he received these dreams. Now, he communicate to the father, communicate to the rest of the family, and for sure, if we add it to the favoritism and the behavior of Joseph and the relationship that his brothers have to him, this added more tension and problem to the family situation. The Bible text tells us that they hate him even more because of these dreams and because of these words, because even if Joseph explained it openly, they understood the dream, especially this first that is presented to us when they were binding sheep in the field, and one arose above the other ones, and all the other bow down in front of this. The second one related with the sun, the moon, and the stars, and that all of them bow down. So was not difficult to understand what was the meaning and how the future will be like. So even the father in this case rebuked him according to the biblical report. And this shows us that everybody was very much impressed with these kind of dreams. And then the father thought carefully and deeply about that. But besides hatred, envy, and an open animosity was observed not only from Joseph, but also the father observed openly the reaction of the rest of the family. So we see that it's an escalation of tension, and we will see in further questions how also this developed. But in Acts 7:9 we find like a summary of how in the New Testament is presented to us the same situation, and is in the first part of verse 9 that the patriarchs moved with envy sold Joseph into Egypt. So these patriarchs that are mentioned here are his 11 brothers that become after the heads of every tribe of Israel when they become a nation in a very structured country, also with a geographical place. So the situation is difficult, very tension, and it's already mentioned to us that the end of it will be the rejection completely of Joseph from the side of his brothers.
Thank you very much, Raquel. Actually, this question reveals also a situation in a different aspect. We have our brothers not only inside of the church, but also the whole world. All we are brothers and sisters, all humanity, it's brothers and sisters, or brotherhood. However, if there is a church that, for example, receive a prophecy like Seventh-day Adventist Church, our faith, and we have knowledge about the end of the world and what is going to happen is how is that going to happen. And we believe that we are the chosen people that have this message, and we announce this prophecy to the world. What is the reaction many times? Often the reactions in the world is the same like the reactions of Joseph and his brothers. Instead of accepting the message and look at the prophecy and pay attention to it, most of the time we are facing a stronger animosity and rejection. And not only rejection, but we're going to see that a persecution is going to take place against the one that is bringing the prophecy. Joseph was not showing only preferences that his father may have it to him, but he demonstrated preferences that God makes to him. God have chosen him as a special instrument, a tool for salvation, not only for his family, but for the whole region. And we will see how that developed. Let's go to the next question and see what little more details now what happened in this very confused and very burdened family relationship. Although he had to travel along for a very long distance, was Joseph willing to obey his father's instructions to go and see how his brother were doing? And knowing his brother feeling, did he object or carry out his father's desire? What can we say about this here, Raquel?
Israel was well established in Canaan, but they needed to look for pastures, and this converted them in a nomadic group of people. In this specific case, Israel was already old, so he sent his sons to look for good pastures. And in all these places that they needed to go, Israel was concerned about the situation that they will be in. So he asked Joseph to go and to look after them, and he oriented him saying, your brothers are in Shechem, so go there and let me know what is going on, if everything is in good condition. And we see here something amazing. Joseph was willing, without questioning or remarks, but how you can send me to him when you know how our relationship is and how they envy me and hatred, they have hatred against me. He was willing to go, and he made big efforts to find them because he was not able to find them immediately. So was a long distance, as the question tells us, and a lot of efforts, patience, and perseverance to achieve the goal, to find them. So we find here some other attributes of the character of Joseph that impress us. He was obedient, he was faithful, he was committed, he was responsible. He had an organized way of achieving his goals, and he asked people where they are and how they can find them. So he was very open for new resources and options to achieve the final goal, the commission that was entrusted to him by his father. So he was about the feelings or the rejection that he was receiving from the rest of the family. So for him, the principle of obedience, the value of fulfillment, the duty that was entrusted to him was about his own emotions or situation where he was.
Thank you very much. It's interesting to to see the reaction of Joseph. Although he was hated, it says here, and he faced this open animosity the size of his brothers, he did not permit that the similar feelings conquer his heart. The opposite, he had a good faith in his brothers, he loved them, he had a very positive attitude, and even if his father was sending him alone, he didn't fear facing his brothers and going to them. The opposite, he was joyfully agreed to fulfill the will of his father. And we see here the difference among the brothers and why actually God have elected him, because he did not permit the circumstances to mold and to form his understanding of his behavior. He was acting according to principles and not according to the circumstances, and this is the sign of the people of God, and this is how we are supposed to handle, no matter if our brothers inside of the church or brothers outside of the church excuse me, are negatively and hatefully and maybe have the intention to persecute us. We should never permit the enemy to take place of our heart and our mind, and that we have a negative feeling of hatred or envy or revenge toward our brothers. The opposite, we need to keep the faith, and we need to keep the relationship with Jesus Christ and be guided by the Holy Spirit the same way as Joseph did. Let's go forwards and see what else Joseph did. After walking at least 50 miles for the valley of Hebron in Shechem, did he find his brothers where he expected. As he was tired and wearing on the field without result, what did a man ask him? Well, how in general the story developed, Raquel?
Joseph was firm to fulfill the duty that his father had given to him. So he didn't put aside this responsibility because it was difficult, because it was a long trip, because he was tired, but he persevered. And finally he finds somebody. And the question was addressed to him, "What seekest thou?" And he was answering this question, "I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks." In this answer, we find the most tender and loving feelings that Joseph had toward his brethren. First, he identified himself as my brethren, and he requested in a very petitioner way, "Please let me know, help me with that, where they are." And we see here that he not only expressed love and intimacy in the relationship of the family, but also interest, care, desire to provoke this encounter and to be together and be able to make sure that they are well and that he can come back, give a good report to his brother. And this is something that impressed us especially because during the lesson, especially in the last section, we will find the parallel between the behavior of Joseph, Jesus Christ, and our own behavior toward others.
Thank you very much, Raquel. Very interesting how the story developed, and actually not only that Joseph could have a negative feeling and expectations of his brothers, but as we could see, it was very difficult to fulfill the will of his father because of distance, and he need to walk in the heat of the sun, and he need to look for his brothers, and was not easy. So he had the possibility to find an excuse not to find his brothers. And I think this is very similar in our situation if we want to do missionary work and we're looking for our brothers in the world. and we are doing canvassing work or housework, and we found that we're not well accepted, and there is a lot of efforts and a heavy work that need to be done. We can find easily excuse of not to do the missionary work, or not to spend time, or not to be patient with our brothers and sisters, or maybe God have called us to do certain work for the church, but the church members are not very positive about it. We need to have the spirit of Joseph. We need to persevere. We need to persevere and looking at our brothers, no matter the circumstances and no matter the consequences. And this is what's really happened. Joseph is a real example in this case of perseverance, of love to his brother, and obedience to the order of his father. But let's go furthermore, and we can see what else we can learn from this actually so well-known story. Was he willing to go even further to find them in Dothan? And did he abandon the search? After such a long walking, his great joy at finding them, how was he received by his brothers? Now we come to the culmination, actually the highest point on this lesson and the story. Now, after so much efforts and so much pain and so much we can say perseverance to find them, what was the result? How was he accepted by his brothers? What do we understand in the story?
It's very interesting to compare both reactions, and in Genesis 37 verse 17 and 17 says that when finally he find out his final destination and that he will be able to find his brethren, and he was happy. All his tiredness, all his hunger and thirst was quenched only with the idea to find them. So he was overjoyed. But in the process to come near to them, they conspire against him to slay him, tell us the Bible. And this is extremely painful. If we consider that Joseph was coming near to them with joyful face, with wonderful expectations, and they were conspiring against him. And this is very, very sad. And in this experience of Joseph, we see that sometimes the contracts between the people that really have experience with God, that are moved by love, sympathy, compassion, is very disturbed with the envy, mockery, revenge that the other group of people have. And this is reality. We live in a world that evil and good are confronted, and the people of God will be mocked, will be rejected, and also a decree of death will be proclaimed. So the attitude of Joseph have a very deep meaning, that we need to be above our even vital needs, like hunger and thirst and weariness, in order to achieve others, to find them, and to bring Jesus to them.
Thank you very much. It's interesting. According to the Oriental culture, they are supposed to meet his brother with water, with food, and offer him rest and comfort. However, that was not the case, and was very big the contrast of their behavior. What happened, brothers, in our situation today is very similar, like the situation of Joseph. Why? Because when the message is not desired by the listeners, so our brothers and the world does not accept the message God have given to His church, what happened is that they begin to find, or they try to find fault in the messenger. They try to criticize the messenger, and that's why, in this way, they can diminish the power of the message. If this happened in the church, a criticism takes place many times. Since if envy and jealousy is developed among the brothers, this is what happened. People begin to investigate properly, and maybe they will find some fault. The same thing happened with Daniel, if you remember, when he shows his faithfulness toward his God and the emperor. They tried to find fault in him. And although they searched a long time, they didn't find any. And similar was the case of Joseph. Similar was the case of Cain and Abel. And this is the case that is going to be faced among the brethren today if we're bringing a message similar like Joseph. But let's see now what happened furthermore. We can actually make a parallel between the life of Joseph, the experience of Joseph, and another spiritual experience that have happened in the people of God later on. Joseph actually, by being faithful in everything in the order of his father and having love to his brothers, even in this difficult situation, he turns to be a symbol of something very, very important. What is that what we're facing in the question number 7? Similarly, excuse me, let me read the question. Similarly, who took a very dangerous journey to look for his brothers, knowing full well how he will be received?
If we consider all the character attributes that we have considered during the lesson, we coming now to the last question that is like a closing or wrap up of the main thoughts. Now comparing, bringing in comparison the behavior and attitude of Joseph and Jesus Christ. So we compare this process of seeking, looking after, as the main purpose of the plan of salvation. And we find here that Jesus came from the beautiful and bright heaven to this dark and sick world. And he came to seek you and me, to find out where we are and help us, to give us a solution, hope and sense in our life. And this parable of the ships is very, very appropriated in this context, because this planet is the only part of the creation work of God that reveals against Him. So we are like this lost ship among all the other 99 ships. So Jesus was willing to come here voluntarily, only moved by love, mercy, and compassion toward us as His creatures. So He came to this earth as a very vulnerable little baby in order to give us example in infancy, childhood, youth, and also as adult. In His ministry, again, He presented in front of the world the principles of heaven according to a completely renewed perspective that was not considered for the majority of the people of God at that time. So He came to seek, He came to look for us, He brought us salvation. And we are studying this lesson because Jesus found you and Jesus found me. And that was a reason of rejoicing and happiness, an extremely wonderful experience to praise God. But at the same time, if you remember when Joseph finally saw his brothers in the fire, he was rejoicing, but his brothers were conspiring against him. So in the moment that we have this special encounter with Jesus, so a personal experience take place within us, also Satan and the evil angels are not enjoying this experience, and they will try to separate us from God. So this fight between good and evil is going on today, in the present time, and in every single life of all them that wish to follow God and to look after all the other people around us, because we need repentance, we need a new perspective of life, and Jesus already provided for us this new path, this new orientation, this salvation today and now, with the purpose to go through justification, sanctification, and finally glorification in His name.
Thank you, Raquel. It's a wonderful lesson that we have today about our brothers and the brothers of Joseph. We see that Joseph did not permit the circumstances to change his perspective of life, his understanding of the world, and his understanding of God. And his relationship with God was either disturbed, he was very close together with God, and even when the worst things happened, when his brothers sold him as a slave, he did not, he was not angry with God about that, but he accepted the situation as it is, although he did not understand what happened. Having this attitude and having the heart full of love toward his brothers, even when his brothers were not very loveful and friendly with him, he continued to love him and to be obedient to his father. Following these principles, brothers and sisters, we will never be in the wrong side. We will reflect the character of Jesus the same way as Joseph reflected the character of Jesus and become actually a symbol of the one that is going to come. Dear brothers and sisters, be in good courage and follow up this wonderful, simple, but very important story about Joseph and his brother, and let's adopt this character, the character of Christ in our lives with the help of the Lord. Amen.
Amen.